Sarah's fingers trembled as she pointed at the old photograph on the wall. The small living room fell silent. A ceiling fan hummed weakly, pushing warm Miami air around the room. Brown curtains hung by the window, thin and faded. A pot of soup simmered in the tiny kitchen, but Sarah didn't notice. Her eyes were locked on the picture, a framed photograph of her husband, Michael, smiling back at her from the cracked wall of her housekeeper's home. "That's my husband," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why is my husband's picture in your house?" Nina froze near the doorway, gripping a plastic bowl. The 24-year-old housekeeper, who always moved quickly and spoke softly in the mansion, now looked terrified. Her eyes went wide, her lips parted. "Ma'am, I can explain," Nina stammered. Sarah turned slowly to face her, anger and hurt mixing on her face. "Explain what, Nina? Why is my husband hanging on your wall like family?" The picture didn't lie. It was Michael, younger perhaps, but unmistakably him. His familiar eyes, strong jaw, that same smile he gave her at breakfast. But what was he doing here, in this small house in a crowded Miami neighborhood, far from their gated estate? "Who are you to him, Nina?" Sarah whispered. Nina opened her mouth, but before she could speak, we need to go back to where it all began. If you're enjoying this story, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next incredible story. What do you think Sarah will discover? Drop your predictions in the comments below. That morning it started like every other perfect day in Sarah's world. Sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Martinez estate in Coral Gables. The marble floors gleamed. The scent of fresh coffee and pastries filled the air. Staff moved quietly, efficiently performing their duties. Sarah sat at the long dining table, her tablet in front of her, reviewing reports from her tech companies. She was a billionaire CEO, but today she wore a simple white silk blouse, fitted black trousers, and a gold watch worth more than most cars. She didn't flaunt her wealth. She carried it naturally, as just one part of who she was. Across from her sat Michael, her husband of 10 years. At 38, the same age as Sarah, he was handsome and composed in a navy shirt and silver watch. He scrolled through his phone and smiled. "Working this early?" he teased. "Miss CEO, won't you rest?" Sarah smirked. "If I rest, who'll approve your credit card?" He laughed, deep and warm, filling the room. They looked perfect together, the power couple living the dream life. But even perfect mornings can hide secrets. "Good morning, ma'am," a soft voice said from behind. It was Nina. She entered quietly with a tray of fresh orange juice, wearing a neat gray uniform, her hair pulled back simply. She kept her eyes lowered as always. "Good morning, Nina," Sarah said without looking up from her tablet. "Good morning, ma'am." "Good morning, sir." Michael nodded. "Morning." As Nina poured juice into Sarah's glass, her hand trembled slightly. A drop spilled onto the table. "Sorry, ma'am," Nina whispered quickly, wiping it away. Sarah barely noticed. Small mistakes didn't bother her. She'd hired Nina 6 months ago from an agency. The girl had looked scared and thin that day, her eyes full of worry. But she worked hard and was always polite. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, glancing up briefly. "Yes, ma'am. I'm fine," Nina said quickly, but her eyes flicked toward Michael, just for a moment. It was so fast most people would have missed it, but Sarah didn't miss anything. She was a woman who noticed details. Still, she said nothing. Maybe it was nothing. Michael finished his breakfast and stood, adjusting his watch. "I have to leave early today. Board meeting at 9. "I thought your meeting was at 10, Sarah replied lightly. He paused, just for half a second, then smiled. "They moved it earlier. You know how these executives are." She nodded slowly. "All right, drive safe." He left, his cologne lingering in the air. Nina cleared the plates in silence. For some reason, the house felt heavier that morning, like a storm cloud forming over a clear sky. Around noon, Sarah's driver pulled the black Range Rover into a busy street in Little Havana. Small shops lined the road. Children played on sidewalks. Vendors called out to customers. Sarah sat in the back seat, looking out the window. She had a simple plan, surprised Nina. Earlier that week, Nina had asked for 2 days off to handle something at home. Her voice had trembled as she spoke. Sarah had agreed and even given her extra money for transportation. But last night, Nina had returned with red eyes and a forced smile. "Everything okay?" Sarah had asked. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." Lies always left a mark on a person's face, and Sarah had felt it. So today, with a free afternoon, she told her driver, "Take me to the address Nina put in her file." "Her house." "Ma'am?" he asked, surprised. "Yes. I want to see how she's living. I also have some things for her family." On the seat beside her sat a bag of groceries: rice, oil, pasta, and a small envelope with money. Sarah liked helping people who worked for her, but she also liked seeing things with her own eyes. The car stopped in front of a small, weathered building with peeling paint. "This is the place, ma'am," the driver said. Sarah stepped out carefully, the sun hot on her skin. She adjusted her sunglasses and held the bag. Children played by the entrance, shouting and laughing. A woman carrying laundry greeted her with curious eyes. "Good afternoon," Sarah said politely. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the woman replied, staring at her designer clothes and quiet authority. Sarah climbed the short stairs and knocked on the wooden door marked with a faded number 7. After a few seconds, the door opened. Nina stood there in a plain dress, no makeup. Her eyes went wide. "Ma'am," she breathed, You're here." "Yes," Sarah said calmly. "I was in the area. I thought I'd visit. You didn't tell me your house was this close." Nina's lips trembled. "Ma'am, the house is small. I didn't think." "It's okay," Sarah said with a small smile. "Can I come in?" Nina hesitated a moment too long. Then she stepped aside. "Yes, ma'am. Please." The room was small but neat. A brown sofa, a tiny TV on a plastic stand, and a table with a Bible and candle. A small shelf held a few plates and cups. "So this is where you live?" Sarah said kindly. "You keep it very clean. I brought some groceries for you and your family." Tears sprang into Nina's eyes. "Thank you, ma'am. God bless you." As Nina moved to clear space for the bag, Sarah's eyes scanned the walls, the shelves, the little details that told someone's story. Then she saw it. Her feet slowed. Her breath caught. On the wall, next to a calendar and a faded picture of a little girl, hung a framed photograph. She stepped closer. Her heart began racing. It wasn't possible, but it was. The man in the picture was Michael, younger, maybe wearing a casual shirt, smiling in that way she knew so well. His arm was around someone just outside the frame, cut off by the picture's border. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Jesus," she whispered. "This is Michael." Behind her, the plastic bowl in Nina's hands clattered. "Ma'am, please," Nina said shakily. "I can explain. It's not what you think." Sarah turned slowly, her eyes dark and searching. "Who took this picture?" she demanded. "How do you have my husband's picture on your wall, Nina?" Nina's eyes filled with tears. Her lips trembled as she opened her mouth. "Ma'am, Michael isn't just your husband," she whispered. Sarah's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Nina's next words came out in a broken whisper. He's the reason my mother died." The plastic bowl hit the floor and shattered. For a moment, the whole room froze. The soup in the kitchen kept bubbling. Children outside kept playing. The fan kept spinning slowly. But inside Nina's small room, time seemed to stop. Sarah stared at her housekeeper. No, stared through her, trying to understand the words that had just been spoken. Michael, her husband, the love of her life, the man who'd kissed her forehead that morning, was now being connected to the death of a woman he'd never mentioned. "Nina," Sarah whispered, her voice almost breaking. "What are you saying? What do you mean your mother died because of Michael?" Nina squeezed her eyes shut. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her hands trembled against her dress. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she whispered. "Not like this. Please sit down, ma'am." "I don't want to sit," Sarah said sharply, but her legs felt weak. Nina pointed to the brown sofa. "Please, ma'am. If you fall, I don't know what to do." Sarah's anger softened slightly. She lowered herself onto the sofa, her eyes fixed on Nina. Nina took a deep breath and sat gently on the wooden chair by the table. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Michael is the reason my mother died," she said again. "But not because he killed her. It's not like that." Sarah leaned forward, her heart racing. "Then what happened?" Nina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Then she began. Years ago, when I was 8, my mother worked as a cleaner at a hotel in South Beach. We were very poor. My father left when I was little, so it was just me and my mom. She looked down at her hands. One day, she came home crying. I never seen her cry like that. She told me she'd lost her job. Why? Sarah asked softly. Nina swallowed hard. She was accused of stealing an expensive watch from one of the hotel's VIP guests. Sarah's heartbeat skipped. A watch. A false accusation. A VIP. She kept saying she didn't steal it. Nina continued. She begged them to check the cameras. She begged them to call the man so she could explain. Tears filled Nina's eyes again. But the man refused to listen. He said he didn't care. He said he didn't have time for nonsense. He told the hotel to fire her immediately. Sarah felt something cold crawl up her spine. Who was this man? Nina met her eyes. It was Michael, ma'am. Sarah's breath caught. No, she whispered. Michael would never. Nina shook her head quickly. Ma'am, please. I'm not saying he's a bad man. People change. Maybe he wasn't the same then. But what happened destroyed us. She took a deep breath and continued. My mom lost her job that day. She begged and cried, but nothing helped. We had no savings, no family, nothing. Her voice broke. We couldn't pay rent. We couldn't buy food. She got sick, very sick. Malaria. And there was no money for the hospital, no money for medicine. Sarah closed her eyes tightly, fighting her own tears. She died in our one-room apartment, Nina said softly, pointing to the small space. Right there, holding my hand. It happened in a place just like this. For a moment, Sarah couldn't speak. Her throat tightened. Her palms began to sweat. Her mind refused to accept the pieces falling together. But why do you have his picture? Sarah asked, forcing the words out. Nina's face softened in a sad, painful way. Because the day my mother died, she told me something I never forgot. What? She said, find a man who took everything from us. Don't hurt him, but let him see what he caused. One day, the truth must meet itself. Her voice wavered. That was the last promise I ever made. Sarah blinked. So you kept his picture for revenge? Nina shook her head fast. No, ma'am. Not revenge. I swear. I only wanted to face him someday, to tell him what he did, to let him know his mistake destroyed a whole life. Sarah stared at the picture again. Michael looked so young, so unaware. But why did you choose to work in my house? Sarah asked suddenly. Why come into my home? Nina lowered her eyes. I didn't choose, she whispered. I didn't even know it was your house. The agency just sent me. When I arrived and saw Michael that first day, I almost fainted. Sarah remembered that day clearly now. Nina had looked scared, nervous, jumping at every sound. Not because she was new, but because she'd recognized Michael. And you kept quiet, Sarah said slowly. Yes, ma'am, because he didn't remember me. And I didn't want to destroy your marriage. I didn't want trouble. I just wanted to work and survive. A long silence filled the room. Sarah didn't move. Nina didn't move. The air grew heavier with each passing second. But Nina, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell Michael? Nina hesitated. Because, she said quietly, what I discovered later made everything worse. Sarah's eyes widened. What did you discover? Nina took a shaky breath. Michael may not have just caused my mother's death. He might also be the reason I grew up without a father. Sarah's heart stopped. What are you talking about? Nina looked up slowly. My mother told me something before she died. She said the man who destroyed our life wasn't just her boss. She held her breath. He was also the man she once loved. Sarah felt her whole body go cold. Michael loved your mother? Nina nodded slowly. And ma'am, she added softly, there's something even worse. Sarah's voice cracked. What? Nina's lips shook as she spoke the words. My mother said he might be my father. The room spun. For a full minute, Sarah didn't move. Her hands stayed frozen on her knees. Her breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. Her heartbeat felt like it was punching her chest from the inside. Nina's soft whisper echoed in the tiny room. He might be my father. The words hit Sarah so hard she felt the walls shift. She lifted her eyes slowly, staring at the young woman across from her. Nina, 24 years old, quiet, polite, always respectful. A girl she trusted in her home. A girl who might be. No. Her mind refused to say it. That's not possible, Sarah whispered, shaking her head. Michael would have told me. He would have said something. He couldn't have. Her voice cracked. Nina's eyes filled with silent tears. I didn't believe it at first either, ma'am. For many years, I told myself my mother only said it because she was sick. Maybe she imagined it. Maybe the pain made her confused. She took a deep breath. But after I came to your house, after I saw him, all the things she said started to make sense. Sarah's voice trembled. What things? Nina wiped her cheeks and looked down. My mother said she once worked in a small accounting office where Michael was doing an internship. Back then, he was young and quiet. He noticed her. They became friends, close friends. Nina looked up again, eyes wet. She said he was kind. She said he used to buy her lunch when she had no money. He'd walk her to the bus sometimes. They talked every day. And one day, they crossed a line. Sarah's chest tightened. Crossed a line. A simple phrase carrying the weight of a broken world. Nina, listen, Sarah said, her voice shaking. Michael has never told me anything like this. Not even once. My husband wouldn't hide a child. Nina swallowed hard. I'm not saying he knew, ma'am. My mother said she tried to tell him she was pregnant. She called him. She wrote letters. She waited outside the company for days, but he didn't show up. Maybe he traveled. Sarah said quickly, clinging to hope. Nina shook her head. My mother said she later heard he left the country that same week. He didn't tell her anything. He just disappeared. A slow chill slid down Sarah's spine. She knew Michael had studied abroad in his youth. He'd mentioned it many times, but he always made it sound simple, like nothing important had happened before he left. So your mother believed he abandoned her, Sarah said quietly. Nina nodded. But ma'am, my mother never hated him. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She said, maybe he was young. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he got scared. She never blamed him for leaving. Nina paused. It was only after the watch incident, after he made her lose her job, that her heartbreak turned into pain she couldn't forgive. Sarah closed her eyes, rubbing her forehead. Her whole world felt like it was cracking open. Ella, you're saying things that don't make sense, she said weakly. Michael would never treat a woman like that. He respects people. He's gentle. Nina nodded slowly. He's gentle now. But ma'am, do you know who someone was 20 years ago? The question landed hard. People change. People hide their past. People bury things so deep they start believing the lie. Still, Sarah shook her head. I can't believe this until I hear it from him. Until he tells me himself. Nina's voice softened. That's why I never said anything, ma'am. Because I wanted him to speak first. I hoped one day he'd look at me and remember. But he didn't. She touched the frame on the wall. That's why I kept this picture. My mother gave it to me. She said it would help me find the truth one day. Sarah felt something inside her collapse. Not because of anger or jealousy, but because she didn't know what to believe anymore. Michael, her husband, the man who held her when she cried, the man who supported her through every business challenge, the man who said she was his whole world. Had he built their marriage on a secret so big it could destroy everything? I need air, she whispered. She stood quickly and moved toward the door, but her legs wobbled. Nina rushed forward to help, but Sarah pulled away gently. I'm fine, she said, though she wasn't. She stepped outside into the sun. The heat hit her skin, but she barely felt it. Children ran past, laughing. A woman washed clothes in a bucket. Life was normal here, messy, loud, real, unlike the polished mansion where she lived. Nina stood behind her, scared. Ma'am, please don't hate me. I swear I didn't come to destroy your home. I didn't plan to ever say any of this. I only wanted to survive. Sarah turned slowly, her eyes soft but hurt. I don't hate you, Nina, but I'm confused, and I'm afraid of what this means. Nina nodded, wiping her cheeks. Ma'am, there's more. Sarah's stomach twisted. More. Nina hesitated, then stepped back inside. When she returned, she was holding a small old envelope, brown, faded, torn at the edges. She handed it to Sarah with trembling fingers. This was the letter my mother wrote to Michael the week she found out she was pregnant. She tried to give it to him, but never got the chance. Sarah stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. Slowly, she opened it. Inside was a neatly folded piece of paper with shaky handwriting. She unfolded it. The first line made her knees almost give out. Michael, I'm carrying your child. Her breath hitched. She kept reading, eyes widening, heart pounding. Her fingers tightened around the paper so hard it almost ripped. Because near the end, buried in the middle of the letter, was a name she'd never heard before. If anything happens to me, please remember our daughter, Nina Marie. Nina Marie, Sarah whispered. Is that your full name? Nina nodded. My mother named me after him because she loved him, even when he never came back. Sarah took a step back. Everything felt wrong. Everything felt unreal. And then, before she could speak, her phone rang loudly in her bag. She jumped. She pulled it out. Her heart froze when she saw the name on the screen. Michael calling. At the worst possible moment. Sarah stared at the screen, breathing hard. Nina's eyes widened too. It's him, Sarah whispered. The phone rang again. She swallowed hard and pressed answer. Hello, she said, trying to steady her voice. Michael sounded calm. Too calm. Sarah, where did you go? I came home early, and they said you left without telling anyone. Is everything okay? Sarah's lips parted, but no words came out. Michael continued. I need to talk to you. There's something important I've been hiding from you. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What? What do you mean? James hesitated. Then he said it. Sarah, we need to talk about my past. About a woman I once knew. There are things you don't know. Sarah's eyes filled with shock. Nina clasped her hands over her mouth. Michael breathed deeply through the phone. Sarah, are you alone? She looked at Nina. She looked at the picture on the wall. I can hear you, Michael, she whispered. Go on. Sarah's hand trembled so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Michael's voice on the other end was steady. Too steady for a man about to break open their entire marriage. Sarah, he repeated softly. Are you alone right now? Alone? She looked around the small compound in Little Havana. Children ran past with toy trucks. A woman fried plantains by the gate. Nina stood in the doorway, hugging herself tightly, eyes shining with fear. No, she wasn't alone. But emotionally, spiritually, in her heart, she'd never felt more alone in her life. I can hear you, Michael, Sarah said quietly. Go on. Nina stepped back inside the house, giving Sarah space but never moving too far. Michael breathed deeply like a man carrying a secret he'd held too long. Sarah, before I went abroad years ago, something happened. Something I never told anyone. Not even you. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. He continued. There was a girl, a young woman who worked in the office where I interned. Her name was Maria. Nina gasped softly from the doorway. Her mother. Michael was saying her mother's name. Sarah closed her eyes. Michael, what happened between you and Maria? Silence. Then his voice softened with guilt. We were close. Too close. I was young, foolish, and careless. I liked her a lot, and she liked me too. Sarah's fingers curled into a fist. So you had a relationship with her? Yes, he whispered. But it wasn't serious. At least, I didn't think it was. I'd already got my visa to leave the country. Everything was moving fast. I didn't know she loved me that much. Sarah's throat tightened. Did you get her pregnant? I don't know, he said quietly. She told me she needed to talk to me urgently before I left, but I was scared. I avoided her. I left without hearing her out. Avoided her. Left her. Ran away from consequences. Sarah felt like her chest was being crushed. And the watch incident. Michael inhaled sharply. That was a misunderstanding. I dropped my watch somewhere and assumed someone took it. I didn't know her name was brought into it until later. I didn't know she lost her job. I swear I didn't know. Tears stung Sarah's eyes, not from anger this time, but because she could hear the regret in his voice. James continued, his voice shaking. For years, Sarah, I wondered if I had a child somewhere, but I was too afraid to face the truth, too afraid to ruin our marriage. So I buried it. I buried everything. Sarah pressed the phone closer to her ear. Michael might not be a monster. He might just be human, a human who'd made a terrible mistake. And why are you telling me this today? She asked quietly. He hesitated. Because yesterday, someone from my past contacted me. Sarah's eyes snapped open. Oh, a woman, he said. She said she knew Maria. She said she has something I need to see. Something important. She wants to meet me. Sarah's blood ran cold. A woman? Someone who knew Nina's mother? Nina stepped closer slowly, listening. What did she say she has? Sarah asked. The truth, he whispered. She said the truth is finally ready to come out. Sarah felt a chill run through her body. What truth, Michael? Michael's voice broke. Sarah, I think Maria might have given birth before she died. Her stomach flipped. And you think the child is yours? I don't know, he said quietly, but it's possible. And if it's true, then that child would be 24 years old today. 24. Sarah slowly turned her head toward Nina. 24. Nina stared back at her, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Michael continued speaking, unaware of the storm unfolding on the other end. Sarah, I'm sorry. I should have told you long ago. I should have told the truth before we even married. But I didn't know how. I'm not proud of who I was, but I'm ready to face the truth now. Sarah's hand tightened around the phone. Michael, I need to ask you something. Anything. If that child existed, she said slowly, would you want to know them? Michael hesitated. Then he said something that shook her to the core. If that child is alive, I want to make things right. I want to be in their life. I want to apologize. To be a father. Nina covered her mouth as a sob escaped. Sarah closed her eyes. Michael, what time is this meeting with the woman? Evening. Around 6. I want you to come with me. I can't do this alone. Sarah nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see her. I'll come. Good. Michael said, relieved. I love you, Sarah. And I'm sorry. She ended the call without replying. Silence filled the compound. Nina stepped forward, her whole body trembling. Ma'am, what did he say? She whispered. Sarah looked at her, really looked at her. The gentle eyes, the soft voice, the pain in her heart, and the possibility that she might be Michael's daughter. Sarah felt her chest tighten in a new way. A painful, confusing mix of anger, sadness, fear, and something unexpected, empathy. She stepped closer to Nina, but before she could speak, a loud knock hit the door violently. Bam! 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 Both women jumped. Nina! A deep male voice shouted from outside. Open this door now. We need to talk. Nina froze, her eyes filled with fear. Who is that? Sarah whispered. Nina's lips shook as she replied. That's my uncle. And ma'am, if he finds you here, everything will get worse. The violent pounding grew louder. Bam! 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 Nina shook from head to toe. Sweat gathered on her forehead. Her fingers twisted into her dress. Ma'am, she whispered, voice breaking, please, you need to hide. Sarah blinked. Hide? What? Nina rushed toward her, panic tightening her voice. My uncle isn't like other people. He's angry, unpredictable, and he hates rich people. If he sees you here, he'll think I brought you to expose him. Please, ma'am. Please go inside. Another hard knock rattled the door. Nina, open this door. Sarah stood frozen for a second, but something inside her shifted. She was a billionaire, yes, but right now, she was a woman who'd stepped into a story she never asked for. She gently placed her hand on Nina's shoulder. I'm not leaving. You don't hide from fear. You face it. Nina's eyes widened. Ma'am, he's dangerous. Sarah shook her head. No. He's just loud. I've handled louder people. Nina swallowed hard, terrified, but she unlocked the door. It swung open. A tall, broad-shouldered man with angry eyes and a rough beard stormed in. His shirt was half-buttoned, and he smelled of alcohol. His gaze locked onto the stranger in his niece's living room. Onto Sarah. He froze, not because he recognized her, but because her presence screamed power. Who's this? He demanded, pointing at her. Nina, you bringing rich women to this house now? You want trouble? You want to disgrace me? Nina stepped in front of Sarah quickly. Uncle, please. Don't shout. She just came to check on me. Check on you, he barked, his eyes burning with anger. Since when do billionaires check on poor housekeepers in Little Havana? He moved closer, raising his voice. You think I don't know what you're doing? You want to expose me? You want to talk about what happened years ago? Nina flinched. Sarah stepped forward, eyes firm. What exactly happened years ago? The man turned slowly, stunned that she dared speak. You listen to me, he growled, stepping closer. Whatever you think this girl told you, she's lying. We don't need your rich woman pity. Leave his place now. Nina grabbed his arm, pleading, Uncle, please. She knows everything about Mama, about Michael, about the letter. She found the picture. That was the wrong thing to say. Her uncle spun around, eyes wide with fury. You showed her the picture? I didn't. Nina cried. She saw it on the wall. Please stop. He cut her off with a roar. Nina, that picture was never meant to be seen. You want to destroy your life. You want to destroy his life. Sarah stepped between them immediately. That's enough. Don't raise your voice at her. The man glared at her. And who are you to tell me anything? Sarah Martinez, she replied simply. His eyes twitched. He recognized the surname. Everyone did. You're Michael's wife? He whispered. Yes. He took a step back, then another. Then he sank into the nearest chair like a man whose secrets had finally been dragged into the light. You shouldn't have come here, he muttered. You shouldn't have found that picture. Sarah walked slowly toward Nina's uncle. Why hide Nina from the truth? He rubbed his face with both hands, shaking. Because, he said slowly, voice cracking, telling her the truth would destroy everything. Nina stepped closer. What truth, uncle? Tell me now, please. The man lifted his head, eyes red. I was the one who stopped your mother from telling Michael the truth. I told her it was useless. I told her he'd reject her. I was the one who told her not to go to him again. Nina's breath caught. You stopped her? He nodded weakly. I told her she should raise you alone. I told her rich people don't care about poor girls like us. I told her she was better off without him. Nina's voice broke. But she died, uncle. She died because she lost everything. I didn't know she would die, he yelled back, his voice cracking. I thought she'd get another job. I thought she'd be strong. I didn't know she was sick. He buried his face in his hands. I thought I was protecting her. Instead, I destroyed her. Nina collapsed onto a chair, sobbing. Sarah felt her chest twist painfully. This wasn't just about Michael. This wasn't just about Maria. This was a whole web of fear, pride, and mistakes stretching across decades. She walked slowly toward Nina and placed a gentle hand on her back. It's okay. Let out. Nina cried harder. Her uncle looked away, ashamed. After a long moment, he spoke again. Nina, he whispered, I hid the truth because I didn't want you going after Michael. I didn't want you hoping for a life that wasn't yours. I thought it would break you. Nina looked up, tears streaming. I didn't want his money. I just wanted to know the truth. I just wanted to know who I am. Her uncle lowered his head. Then he reached into his pocket. With trembling hands, he pulled out a small folded document. I kept this for years, he said quietly. Your mother left it with me. Told me to give it to you when you were old enough. Nina stared at the paper. What is it? He handed it to her slowly. Nina opened it with shaking hands. Sarah stepped closer. Her eyes widened the moment she saw it. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a picture. It was a birth certificate. Nina's birth certificate. And under father's name, a single name was written in faded ink. Michael A. Martinez. Sarah gasped. Nina's mouth fell open. Her uncle dropped his face into his palms. I didn't want you to see it. I didn't want your heart to break the way your mother's did. Nina burst into sobs, so heavy her entire body shook. Sarah knelt beside her, holding her as tightly as she could. But the chapter didn't end with tears. It ended with the sound of a car approaching the building. A sleek black SUV. Quiet engine. Tinted windows. It stopped right outside. A familiar voice called out, Sarah, are you here? Nina froze. Sarah inhaled sharply. Her uncle's head snapped up. Michael stepped into the compound. He looked from Sarah to Nina to the birth certificate in her hands. His face drained of color. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice shaking. What is that?" Sarah stood slowly, her eyes locked on him. She held up the paper. "Michael," she said in a trembling voice, "you need to see this." Michael stepped forward. He reached for the certificate with shaking fingers. He read the name, and the man who always appeared calm, strong, in control, fell to his knees. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh God, no." Nina stood frozen, tears still streaming down her face. Sarah stood between them, her heart breaking for both of them. Michael looked up at Nina, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes filled with recognition, with horror, with grief. "Maria," he whispered. "You look just like Maria." Nina's voice came out small and broken. "She was my mother." Michael's hands covered his face. His shoulders shook. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she was pregnant. I would have," his voice broke. "I would have come back. I would have helped her. But you didn't," Nina said quietly. "You left, and then you took her job, and she died." Michael's face crumpled. "The watch. I didn't know it was her. I didn't know her name was mentioned. I just told them someone stole it and left. I didn't follow up. I didn't care enough to follow up." He looked at Sarah with desperate eyes. "I was young and selfish and stupid. I thought only about myself." Sarah's voice was calm but firm. "Michael, this isn't just about being young. You had a responsibility. To Maria. To," she looked at Nina, "to your daughter." The word hung in the air like thunder. Michael turned back to Nina. "I'm your father," he whispered, like saying it out loud made it real. Nina nodded slowly. "According to that paper, yes." Michael crawled closer on his knees. "Nina, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for abandoning your mother. I'm sorry for what happened with her job. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm sorry you grew up without a father because of my mistakes." Tears streamed down his face. "I can't fix the past, but if you'll let me, I want to be part of your future. I want to know you. I want to—" His voice broke again. "I want to be your father, if you'll have me." Nina stood still, her whole body trembling. Years of pain, years of wondering, years of anger and confusion all came crashing down at once. "You want to be my father now?" she whispered. "After all this time? After I've lived my whole life without you?" Michael nodded, still on his knees. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I can never make up for what I did. But please, Nina, please give me a chance." Nina looked at Sarah. Sarah looked back at her with eyes full of compassion. "What do you want, Nina?" Sarah asked gently. "Not what anyone else wants. What do you want?" Nina closed her eyes. Tears squeezed out. When she opened them again, she looked at Michael, really looked at him. "I want the truth," she said. "I want to know why you left my mother. I want to know if you ever loved her. I want to know who you really are." Michael nodded quickly. "I'll tell you everything. Everything. I promise." Nina took a shaky breath. "And I want you to know what your choices did to us. I want you to understand the pain you caused." "I will," Michael said. "I'll listen to everything. I'll carry that weight for the rest of my life." Nina's uncle stepped forward. "And what about her?" He pointed at Sarah. "What about your wife? You just going to bring your outside daughter into your mansion and pretend everything is fine?" All eyes turned to Sarah. She stood there, the billionaire CEO, the powerful woman who controlled boardrooms and commanded respect everywhere she went. But right now, she was just a wife facing the biggest decision of her life. She looked at Michael, then at Nina, then back at Michael. "Nina didn't ask to be born into this situation," Sarah said quietly. "She didn't ask for any of this. She's innocent." She stepped closer to Nina. "And she's your daughter, Michael. Which means if we're going to move forward, she's part of our family." Nina's eyes widened. "Ma'am." Sarah took her hand gently. "I won't pretend this doesn't hurt. I won't pretend I'm not angry or confused or scared. But I won't punish you for your father's mistakes. Michael stood slowly, hope flickering in his eyes. Sarah, she turned to him, her voice firm. We have a lot to work through, Michael. A lot of conversations. A lot of healing. This doesn't just go away. I know, he said quickly. I know. I'll do whatever it takes. Sarah nodded. Then we start with the truth. All of it. No more secrets. No more hiding. She looked at Nina. And you need time. Time to process everything. Time to decide what kind of relationship you want with us. Nina wiped her tears. Thank you, ma'am. Call me Sarah, she said softly. Three months later, Sarah sat in her home office, looking out at the Miami skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. A soft knock came at the door. Come in, Sarah said. Nina entered, but she looked different now. She wore a simple but elegant dress. Her hair was styled. Her eyes, though still carrying traces of old pain, held something new. Hope. You wanted to see me? Nina asked. Sarah smiled and gestured to the chair across from her desk. Yes. Sit down. Nina sat, looking nervous. Sarah slid a folder across the desk. I've been thinking a lot these past few months. About family. About second chances. About what it means to make things right. Nina opened the folder. Her eyes widened. Inside were enrollment papers for community college, a scholarship application, and a check with more zeros than Nina had ever seen in her life. Ma'am, Sarah, I can't. You can, Sarah said firmly. You told me once you wanted to be a nurse, that you wanted to help people the way you wish someone had helped your mother. Nina's eyes filled with tears. This is your chance, Sarah continued. Not because Michael owes you, not out of guilt, but because you deserve it. Because you're smart and hardworking and you have dreams that deserve to come true. Nina stood up and walked around the desk. She hugged Sarah tightly. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Sarah hugged her back. You're welcome, Nina. When they pulled apart, Sarah added, Michael wants to have dinner with you this weekend. Just the three of us. No pressure. Just talking, getting to know each other. Nina nodded slowly. I'd like that. Good, Sarah said. Because family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about trying. And it's about forgiveness. Nina smiled, a real smile this time. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. Sarah, yes. What you did for me, accepting me into your life, even though it hurt you, that's the most powerful thing anyone has ever done for me. Sarah's eyes softened. We all deserve grace, Nina, even when we don't think we do. Nina left, and Sarah sat back in her chair. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been tears, arguments, therapy sessions, and long nights of questioning everything. But slowly, piece by piece, they were building something new. Not a perfect family, but a real one. Michael had started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring young men about responsibility and consequences. He'd publicly apologized to Nina and privately worked every day to earn her trust. Sarah had learned that strength wasn't about having all the answers. It was about facing hard truths with an open heart. And Nina? Nina was learning that her story didn't end with her mother's death. It was just beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah picked up her phone and sent a message to her family group chat, the one that now included Nina. Dinner this Sunday. My house. Everyone brings their favorite dish. Let's try this family thing again. 3 responses came back almost immediately. From Michael, I'll be there. Thank you for this. From Nina, I'll bring dessert. Red heart. From Sarah's assistant. Should I prepare the dining room for 3 or will there be others? Sarah smiled and typed back, prepare for growth. This family is just getting started. She set down her phone and looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the darkness. Sometimes the hardest truths led to the most beautiful transformations. Sometimes broken pieces could be put back together in new ways. And sometimes family wasn't about where you came from. It was about where you chose to go together. The end. Or is it just the beginning? Thank you so much for watching this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next powerful story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about forgiveness, second chances, and the power of family. Drop a comment below telling us, what was your favorite moment in this story? We have more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you're subscribed. See you next one. Hashtag family story, hashtag forgiveness, hashtag second chances, hashtag powerful stories, hashtag true history, hashtag subscribe now.